Woo. It's all over after this, we gotta start strong. We're all familiar with emoticons. As much as I would love wasting your time recounting the history of the American Standard Code for information interchange, it wouldn't really be worth it. Various ASCII emoticons are famous for their use, but in the terminally online space, perhaps the most famous is a woo, representing two closed eyes and a cat mouth, usually meant to represent something cute or innocent. It's more specifically a cow-emoji, ASCII art emojis originating from 80s Japan. This itself has spin-off emoticons like a whoa and twit, representing surprise and crying respectively. A woo, though, has taken on a life of its own outside of simply being a way to punctuate a cute message or post. A woo became tied to various online subcultures like scene culture and Tumblr, which emphasized a cute or innocent appearance, taking off especially in the mid to late 2010s as these groups began meeting up more commonly in real life and began verbalizing the emoticon. This took it from simply being a U, W, and U to a woo, which is how it would sound when said out loud. It's grown to represent a lot depending on the context it's used in. Sincerely, ironically, nostalgically, parodically, it's become something more than almost any other emoticon. And while a majority of them have been abandoned in favor of emojis or stickers or reaction GIFs, a woo has stuck around. It's natural to ask then, what are the origins of the emoticon itself? That's not a very easy question to answer though, due to the nature of the internet. The sites that would have originally hosted the communities that used a woo are long gone. And as for the casual usage, that would have been in chats like AOL Instant Messenger or other direct messaging apps. There's no way to preserve those without screenshots, so nailing down its early usage is hard. That early usage, by the way, only applies to the English-speaking half of the internet. We know it comes from Japan, but we're focusing solely on the English half. The earliest recorded example of a woo comes from the site Vixen Controlled Library by the user Ghislaine Deslieri. If you're not willing to go to decades-old furry art sites to do research, you're half the man I am. This, though, only exists as a screenshot, rather than a tangible piece of accessible content. For that, you have to go to fanfiction.net. This is a website. Fuck you, you can guess what it does, and the fic we're looking for is Genie of the Puzzle by Daku Kitsune, a puzzle shipping fic. Puzzle shipping is the ship name for Yugi and Atem, meaning that the earliest recorded usage of a woo in the English-speaking internet that we can still access is from a Yu-Gi-Oh! Fanfiction. The part we care about is the preamble of Chapter 6, where the author apologizes for how long chapters are taking to come out, and there we can see it. A woo. The important things: this is not the first usage of a woo. These are not the origins of a woo. Yu-Gi-Oh! Did not invent the phrase. The story often gets misreported as any of those things, but it's only what I said. The earliest recorded usage on the English-speaking internet that we can get to. That said, in a custody case, this is our evidence. The LIOV cocaine bust. Have you ever wanted to call the cops on a Yu-Gi-Oh! Player? Have you ever not wanted to call the cops on a Yu-Gi-Oh! Player? Crime and Yu-Gi-Oh! Don't usually go together, but there are more than a few examples of some illegal stuff happening during a game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm not just talking about misplays. Usually if there's going to be any illegal stuff going on during a Yu-Gi-Oh! Game, it's physical assault. Players who get too upset and angry over a game of Yu-Gi-Oh! When they end up doing something violent, like flipping a table or attacking another player. We're not talking about such pedestrian examples of breaking the law, though. This one time, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was involved in something much, much bigger. For this story, we're going to Australia, New South Wales in particular. On August 23rd, 2022, a major drug bust was done in Fairfield, which resulted in the seizure of over 4 pounds of cocaine, 2 pounds of ice, and the arrest of 5 people in connection with the drugs. This was a massive drug dealing organization with ties all across Australia that had been pinned down to this very specific street in West Sydney. with 5 buildings being raided by Australia's Raptor Squad. You have questions, I know you do, but Raptor Squad is just the name of Australia's specialized police unit dealing with organized crime. All the other divisions have to bum it with actual job titles, meanwhile Raptor Squad gets to be Raptor Squad. All in all, $2 million in cash was found at the scene, as well as $800,000 worth of drugs. But that wasn't all they found. Sticking out like a sore thumb in all of the photos released from the raid is stacks of boxes of Yu-Gi-Oh cards. There was nearly 300 boxes of cards found at the scene, the price of which hovers around $50,000. Why did the Australian drug trade seem to be so interested in new Utopia support? Well, the time this happened exactly is really important when considering what this was. 2022 was the tail end of the COVID lockdowns, and during that time, card games had boomed. During the lockdown, card games switched from being a hobby to a speculative market. In the same way people sold old Disney tapes for hundreds, famous cards like first edition Charizard were selling for hundreds, thousands, heck millions of dollars. As a result, the speculator bubble on card games was bigger than it ever had been, and cannot pop soon enough. A lot of speculators, though, are dumb and don't know what they're doing. So they'll just buy product, hoping that whatever big flashy card is on the cover or has the most sparkles on it will be worth $1 pentillion in 50 years. The comics bubble of the 90s could teach us a lot. Could. This leads us nicely to the time frame again. 2021 to 2022, when Yu-Gi-Oh was swinging at ghosts and missing every softball they could. The quality of packs wasn't low per se, there were good and bad ones, but the value of the boxes themselves was terrible. You'd get a pack like Blazing Vortex with all of its value tied up in a now $3 card, or Dawn of Majesty, that only held value thanks to Starlight Rare Stardust. There was little to no incentive to buying product when it would have just been easier to buy single copies of the cards you needed. And so people who did stockpile worthless sets were sitting on maybe a decent Starlight, but that's it. Yu-Gi-Oh's aggressive reprint policy and eternal format also made sure that chase cards like Pot of Prosperity didn't hold their value forever the way a card like Black Lotus or Charizard do. Prospe is always going to be playable, it's never going to get rotated out, and players at large don't care if their Prospe is secret, common, ghost, or platinum. They just need the card. It might be $100 at time of release, but now you can pick it up for $1. Cards have to be special to hold their value over time, like being a super rare rarity or being a prize card from a tournament. All of this is to explain the circumstances of the boxes found at the drug bust, which were boxes of Lightning Overdrive. This was a set from the era of low value that had Starlight Black Rose, Diviner of the Heralds, and Mu Beta Fafnir. These were the only chase cards in the set worth any amount of money. Trying to speculate or resell boxes of Lightning Overdrive was a bad investment. So why did they have the boxes in the first place? Simple. Money laundering. Money that you get from drugs is dirty money. If it's traced, then you're in big trouble. However, if you get money from selling cards as a part of this big speculator market, then you're all set. Basically, swap the drug money for card money, and you're in the clear. This only works, though, if you actually swap the cards for money. Instead, all that happened was they bought the $50,000 in cards, and then couldn't get rid of them. Remember how I said the bust went down in 2022? Well, LIOV was released in the previous year in 2021, June 3rd in Australia specifically. The dealers had to have been sitting on worthless boxes of cards for a year at that point, and were probably just keeping them to see if they'd appreciate in value. The situation drew instant jokes from the Yu-Gi-Oh fandom, with the number one joke being that cops were tipped off because nobody would willingly buy that much Lightning Overdrive without being on drugs. Assassin cards. Okay. So I've worked really hard to try to make this iceberg as legit as possible. I've given up on interesting facts that would have made for sensational entries simply because I can't verify them. I'll give you an example. I got this one from a source who knows a source who knows a source. But apparently, Valance and Scareclaws were meant to be the same archetype at one point. It makes some sense if you look at the design space of both archetypes, with them both caring about columns and zones and spaces, but I mean, how am I gonna verify something like that? I think the worst thing I could do is put all this effort in and then f*** up. I owe it to anybody who's put in the time to watch this whole endeavor to at least try to give you the real facts. But it is the last part. Assassin cards aren't a broadly defined series of things in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community, and more like minor mass psychosis. Assassin cards are a theory of the community that certain cards aren't made with the intent of being good, or relevant, or competitive, but serve some sort of ulterior motive. You might immediately think of a card like Flux Ocean Field, a card that's currently exclusive to the TCG that's massively powering up Magnet Warrior decks, making them meta, whereas in Japan, they aren't. No, that makes sense, and is a common thing that happens with TCG exclusive cards, buoying decks that in the OCG didn't see the results they were supposed to. Well, then does it mean cards that are meant to kill certain formats? We already talked about how Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon killed the 2016 Worlds format by boxing out the best decks, so is it cards like that? Tingirsu the Orcust of the Evening Star is clearly meant to be Orcust's answer to meta-constituent Thunder Dragon Colossus, or even something as simple as GB Hunter stopping Gladiator Beasts. No. Again, those are much more pointed, but still within the mechanics of the game, entirely sensible. Assassin cards are when design goes a bit deeper and has a function outside of the game itself. The one that I think started the idea that Konami would try to do something like this is the B-Trooper archetype. B-Troopers are a TCG exclusive archetype who were made famous for f***ing up their second wave of support so badly that we flinch every time a TCG exclusive archetype gets a second wave. It's an insect deck with a sole purpose: putting out a lot of monsters in order to link summon. Insects have a fairly robust link lineup, including their in-archetype monsters, so it has plenty to do. Among the things it can do is use Insector Picofalena to equip itself with Retaliating Sea. When that card is sent to the graveyard, like when Picofalena, the card you equip it to, is used as link material, you can search an Earth Insect, which includes Max C. Max C is a card that's haunted Yu-Gi-Oh! For over a decade, and hearing a deck can now search it over the course of a normal combo is a terrible thing to hear. Max C is banned in America though, so the territory B-Troopers would debut in would be safe. In the OCG though, Max C had been legal for as long as it had been in the game. It was semi-limited as like a joke once or twice, but only within the year, back in January, was it finally sunk down to limited. The card's continued legality is despite how completely all-consuming it is on the game. If Max C is legal, you have to account for it, because giving your opponent a free draw on Special Summon is so good, your turn isn't worth giving them that much advantage. Funny thing is that B-Trooper and Max C share more than just a combo line, as both were made in America as TCG exclusives. The theory goes that B-Troopers were intentionally designed the way they were to combo with the previously mentioned cards, to make a deck so optimized at getting Max C that the OCG would have no option but to ban it when the deck finally got to Japan, thus finally putting down the monster they made. The plan seemed flawless, except for when that second wave of support came around and crapped the bed. If you want to turn this from a theory into a conspiracy, you could say that it was purposefully done to punish the TCG for trying to get Max C banned. An even more obtuse example of an assassin card is with the equally underwhelming archetype of Argo Stars. Argo Stars are a series of trap monsters, with the main monster, Glorious Adra, letting you tag into the one you needed to underwhelm your opponent. On the surface, the deck doesn't really break the game on purpose like B-Troopers. But with Argo Stars, it's all in the name. Alter Reality Games was a massive tournament organizer outside of Konami's authority that started running tournaments around 2013 that rivaled the size of actual YCSs. As far as non-Konami efforts go for putting together tournaments, Alter Reality Games was one of the biggest and earliest adopters who managed to outdo Konami at their own game. They seriously threatened Konami's bottom line by putting together tournaments in a way that Konami wouldn't, and offered up pricing that we know Konami can't. They made a few controversial decisions across their history, though, that led to them dropping out of favor, including making choices that dictated the format of the game itself. Alter Reality Games would occasionally put out custom ban lists that contradicted what Konami had put out, as well as contradict their status as a vendor. If they wanted to, they would be able to skew the format to unload valuable products at exorbitant prices before a normal Konami ban list would come in, and render their product worthless. Their website and social media have gone dead for half a decade at this point, but it does still show up. The theory goes that Argo Stars were printed just to push down ARG in search results, so when you looked up Yu-Gi-Oh! ARG, you would get Argo Stars instead of Alter Reality Games. That's why the deck is as underwhelming as it is, because it was more important to get the name out there than it was to make it any good. This is especially true of the Japanese name, which stylized the O in Argo with a star, which meant it was ARG all on its own. While this one I definitely put less stock into than the B-Trooper example, and given how ARG had been dead since 2019, it did also work. Now ARG comes after Arg-O Stars when searching for Yu-Gi-Oh! ARG. It also means that Argo Stars had more of an impact on Google search results than it ever did on the game itself. Arc 5 Tag Force Special Fan Translation. Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan translations have existed for a long time. Not every Yu-Gi-Oh! Game is as lucky as Wheelie Breakers to get officially translated into English. So to understand and appreciate the whole series, fans are often required to translate what Konami won't. Hopefully somebody will be able to translate Forbidden Memories into English from its native Martian. The largest group of games to get fan translations are the Tag Force games, with only the first two ever making it to America and 3 being the last translated into English. The games needed fan support to get over the finish line and translate the rest of the series. We talked about before how these games would give characters who would never get exposure in any other mediums a story, and to leave those untranslated would be a real shame, especially since the games after 3 cover the super popular 5Ds. The community surrounding these translations would grow incredibly protective, and since they were Yu-Gi-Oh! Fans, naturally hated Konami to go along with it. Many were enraged they had to do these translations at all, that Konami was leaving the later Tag Force games in Japan without a proper translation, and that resentment built with every release. When the final Tag Force game, Arc 5 Special, was released in 2015 for the PSP in Japan only, when the Vita had been available for years to that point, 3 community members decided they were going to translate the game the hard way. Omario, Quantum XM, and ClickClaxer01 worked on a fan translation for Tag Force Special that would release soon after the game's actual release between 2015 and 2016. Fans were excited for the translation, since the 3 had worked on previous translations for the Tag Force games. They were trusted names. When it came time to play, though, there were a few odd things off the bat. The game started with a screen thanking the 3 and saying their translation was made for their love of Tag Force and in spite of their hatred of Konami. getting into it, and the translations seem pretty standard. There are a few dubisms worked into the text, like Joey saying Yug instead of Yugi. Pretty cute detail. And then Pegasus shows up. So, when I say spite, I mean spite. The Arc 5 Tag Force fan translation was made this way on purpose as an outlet for the people working on it to get out their frustrations and make jokes. Being an accurate translation was not the first thing on their minds. Raunchy jokes and mistranslations in fan translations are nothing new. Anybody who tried playing the old Final Fantasy games in the early days of the internet would know that throwing in a few random fucks was just kind of the way things were. Arc 5, though, has more than a few jokes in it. The translation is as offensive and edgy as it can get away with. In between properly translated texts are just some of the most out-of-pocket things you could think of. Starting from least to most egregious, the translation is loaded up with references to Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged. Jokes like Odeon saying gummy bears and calling Mako a freaky fish guy are all over the DM portion of the story. After that is the rampant cursing. The original Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime had bad words in it, but it's used so much more liberally and tactlessly in this version. It's never darn, it's always god fucking damn it or shit. It makes the translation feel like less of a labor of love and more just throwing in bad words for the sake of it. Worse yet, though, is that the translation intentionally included as much objectionable content as possible, whether it was sexual, racial, or just flat-out bad taste. Lowlights include Pegasus being a pedophile, Bastion being a wannabe rapist, Callan using slurs like f*** it, Crow being a homophobe. Sissy, don't watch this part. This is the translation's real legacy, as even among offensive fan translations, this is really bad. It'll just be trucking along like normal, and then one of your favorite characters will throw out some heinous bullshit, and you'll just have to sit there slack-jawed. Like, Leo and Luna don't talk like that. Not to mention, this game never got an English translation. If you wanted to play through Arc 5 Special, you were just gonna have to wade through all the gay jokes and slurs to try to play some Yu-Gi-Oh! We have options to do that already. If you did want to check out Tag Force Special now, you're not out of luck. People weren't happy with this translation, and thought it was a shame that the most available version of the game for Western fans was this abomination of a translation, and they didn't take it lying down. Efforts have been made to either modify or remake the translation to remove the offensive content, with the most recent and complete translation coming by way of GL Lance 99, who cataloged his changes and further mods, like adding in voice lines to the game on his YouTube channel. Since then, the original 3 members of the team have left the community and the internet as a whole, with only Click-Claxer sticking around. If you want to try out the game and want to use the right fan translation, just pay attention to when they describe Pegasus before you get too invested. Why Barians don't have mouths. We're going to Tumblr. There's no bullets in it. It's the first thing we all try. I'm going to be direct with you on this one. This entry is referring to an obscure post by Daddy Zorc to Tumblr called Hot Take. The Barians are the only innocent creatures in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! That does sound like a hot take, given all the people they kill, but thinking about it, and it's not unreasonable. A strength of Zexal is the time it dedicates to its villains and showing their thoughts, their wants, and the reasons they are the way they are. Most stories frame chaos as evil and order as good, and while that's how it ends up shaking out in Zexal, it's not that cut and dry. The Barians are masquerading as Yuma's friends, but they form real bonds. Even Vector hesitates before twisting the knife one more time. Their backstories all go into the tragedies they've had delivered upon them, and ultimately the fault lies not with them, but Dawn Thousand. Chaos is not a one-for-one analog for evil. Yuma and several other good guys utilize chaos to power up, and it's not treated as them falling into darkness, but rather just using an energy source for good. The Barians are never shown as beyond redemption, and when they work alongside the good guys, like with Mizar and Nash, these aren't asspulls, but rather elements of the story built up and paid off in a satisfying way. At the core of the conflict, the Barians are simply on the other side, fighting to keep their world alive in a battle that requires one side to go. That's not what the post is about. The post instead focuses on how Barians don't have mouths. Yeah, it's a part of their design, and what do you think that means? It means that Barians are the only creatures in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series that cannot do Vor. The post details how, thanks to their lack of mouths, Barians have no way to partake in Vor, and therefore are incapable of sin. Daddy Zorc compares them to the Ignis, another mouthless species, who are capable of Vor thanks to I eating multiple people. This should be all you have to say before the cops come for their second Yu-Gi-Oh! Based arrest today, but instead it just keeps going. Somebody who will be beaten senseless later asked, what about anal Vor, or cock Vor, which is what it sounds like. Well, they decided to go into even more upsetting detail about the anatomy of the Barians and how they have no visible genitalia or anuses. But then also feel the need to explain how Barians would display hierarchy without penis size being a part of it. They equate the formation of various ridges and protrusions on a Barian to their dick size, with more elaborate and controlled designs meaning a bigger penis. That's why Nash is the top dog, and Dumont is on the bottom of the totem pole. Aren't you happy this is the final part? Bakura's eye color. I bet you've never even noticed the color of Bakura's eyes, just 'cause you get pussy, big whoop. The only climax I'm interested in is the G1, yeah! I could try some preamble here, but I think you just need the facts. Sorry, this is an old one. Sorry, this is an old one. Sorry, this is an old one. What you're looking at is the result of countless hours of work by Tumblr user Neversunk, who has gone through and cataloged the most inconsistent detail in the entire series, the color of Bakura's eyes. It's a very small detail and can be explained away as stylistic choices, but Bakura's eye color shifts so frequently that there are categories upon categories to explain the differences. First is Bakura in the manga. Ryo, as in the non-Yami version of Bakura, is usually shown with teal eyes, though even just here you can already see minor variations that lean closer to silver or even white. There are also more radical versions that give him red or purple eyes when he's next to his dark version. Speaking of which, this one usually goes for the paler blue shades for dark Bakura, while often dipping into a more teal color, with some radical outliers going into brown or yellow. Finally, Thief King Bakura is your safest bet for consistency since they're almost always purple, though very often different shades. Got all that? 'Cause that was just the manga. You know, the one in black and white. The anime makes its first big change and sticks baby Bakura with brown eyes, often ranging in saturation and getting lighter and darker as scenes go on. Dark Bakura usually sticks with brown as well, but a much duller brown. Depictions in Duel Links, Dark Side of Dimensions, and certain Takahashi arts, though, go for much deeper reds. The Season 0 anime wants to be special and gives Bakura green eyes, which he had never had before, while sticking dark Bakura with purples, reds, and even a hot neon pink. The last major outlier is certain pieces of Bakura merch, which will saturate his brown eyes so bad they're a full-on orange. These are the major eye colors Bakura's used across the series, and make up the majority of these different swatches, with the main bulk of it being inconsistencies in shades. They can't decide what color Bakura's eyes actually are supposed to be, and that leads to dozens of different browns, reds, and blues used that might look the same in isolation, but next to each other are obviously different colors. Feel free to make your pride flag out of Bakura eye colors. Karasawa Takahiro. time to get legal again! So to properly tell this story, we're gonna need to get a few things straight first. 2channel is a message board in Japan created by Hiroyuki Nishimura. As you can guess by the name, it's Japan's answer to 4chan, not only predating it, but currently being owned by Nishimura. 4chan in English-speaking circles has the reputation of being where the internet's real work is done. You want something done? Ooh, better go ask 4chan. They really like it when you do that. While the reputation is both earned and overblown, 2channel actually does have a huge influence on Japan. It's one of the most frequently visited sites in the region with over 10 million users. At least back at the time relevant for this story. It starts in 2012 when a stir was kicked up by user Yagami Taichi. Infamous accounts exist on every social media site, but they rarely get the sort of attention and hate that Yagami got on 2channel. 2channel has a ranking of its most hated users, and Yagami was at the top of S tier. He's the Ned Flanders of Simpsons wrestling. I lost the metaphor. Everybody hated this guy and wanted to get back at him for all the shit-stirring he had done over the years. Their chance came when he got baited into posting a college acceptance letter to win an argument. The users of 2channel were able to use the template of the letter to narrow down which school it was, and from there it was as simple as telling them the type of guy Yagami was. It got worse, as using this let them narrow down even more about him until within 4 hours, they had his name, Twitter, and personal blog. Yagami's response to having years of racist posts exposed all at once to his friends, family, and university was to threaten legal action against the 2channel users doxing him. And up to bat to try to save Yagami was Karasawa Takahiro. Karasawa marketed himself as Japan's premier internet defense lawyer, which is why he had no idea how to make a thread on 2channel, fell for obvious bait posts, and got mocked for the fact that his law firm's Twitter account followed a large amount of idols. 2channel didn't give up on dogpiling Yagami, no, he was still in for loads of abuse, but Karasawa transcended 2channel and became a phenomenon across the Japanese internet. Karasawa was ripped apart for years by 2channel users, with the most important piece of info they got being his face. No, they didn't actually have a picture of him, but his profile on the law firm website had a little cartoon rendering of him. This image became the de facto face of the anti-Karasawa movement, and was memed hundreds upon thousands of times with different renderings and uses over the years. This included being the face of a ransomware scam that claimed Karasawa was holding users' computers hostage, as well as the establishment of Koshinism, a religion structured around Karasawa to mock him in the style of the Om Shinrikyo cult. Things would escalate way more from there, from Karasawa receiving razor blades in the mail, being named as responsible for multiple bomb threats, getting his family grave defaced, even being framed for the assault of 2 idols at a meet and greet by attacking them with a handsaw. Karasawa's story is one of the most insane on the entire internet, and the fact that I didn't even have a chance to bring up the song where he poops his pants is testament to the fact that this story is way bigger than any one thing. Yu-Gi-Oh! Plays a small part in it, but it's still worth noting as one of the major events of the early anti-Karasawa movement. During the early days of Karasawa hate, a popular way to spread his image around was by using Yu-Gi-Oh! Card Generator, a website created by Japanese website creator Jex. People would use their edited images of Karasawa's profile picture to make cards out of, sharing them around and collecting all the variants they could. This was one of the early things that actively pissed off Karasawa, and resulted in him contacting Jex to remove the offending cards. Important to note, they were also making cards of Yagami, and he didn't care at all. Jex complied, but that didn't stop people from posting, not even close. Karasawa asked him again, Jex took them down, new cards got uploaded, wash, rinse, repeat. Jex would comply with every message, but kept getting more and more frustrated with Karasawa, to the point he would include messages with the deleted cards blaming it on a certain lawyer. Included as well would be a set of instructions about how to use Google's search algorithm to hide the results from Karasawa, teaching people how to operate under his nose. The likely explanation was that Karasawa didn't know how to find the cards short of just searching his own name and seeing what came up. So by trying to hide it, you could still post the cards and not alert Karasawa. If you want to do reading for yourself, you can always try searching on the Karasawa wiki, which details every event that has happened in this entire sordid saga, including the page dedicated to Jex. Korean Missing Kids Cards. It's September 25th, 2009. You're in South Korea. You've just bought a brand new pack of Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Ancient Prophecy. You're looking for the rare cards, like an Ancient Fairy Dragon or Vayu the Emblem of Honor. You pull some decent commons, a Flamvel Fire Dog, and a skill successor as your super. Not bad overall. But you notice an extra card in the pack. You pull it open and see something you never thought you would. It's a card with a child's face on it, and the text below gives their details like height, age, and last known location. At the bottom of the card is the official Korean Missing Children's hotline and website. What you just pulled is part of a long-standing collaboration between the Korean National Center for Children's Rights and Konami, working together to try to solve sometimes years-old cold cases of missing children. South Korea has a history of mass searches for missing children coming up with nothing, with the most famous being the 5 Frog Boys, 5 young children who went missing and whose remains weren't found for another 11 years. As such, it's pretty common to see mass rollouts of missing children material, like as tape on packaging. The Yu-Gi-Oh cards are simply an extension of that effort. These aren't official cards. They're not used for anything. They're purely part of the collaboration. They'd be included in packs up through the Zexal era when the collaboration finally ended, and I don't doubt it's for a sad reason. See, people who didn't know about the collaboration, like tourists and foreigners, were really freaked out when they opened up packs and saw random missing kids inside. Yu-Gi-Oh fans, being as horrible as they are, started using the missing kids cards as tokens and field centers, or giving them out like they were regular cards to be collected, one even ending up in the collection of Little Karibo. This is the danger of giving the maladjusted malcontent who play Yu-Gi-Oh access to something serious. They'll ruin it. Errata Theory. November 25th, 2015. A post to 4chan's X-board details a recounting of an encounter the poster had with a woman already fake. She was working at a factory going through a massive shutdown across the country, closing down factories and packing away supplies into boxes. The tape gun the girl used, though, had a mysterious word written on the tape. Errata. Upon voicing her concern, the girl had her tape gun taken away, and was warned by an older worker that she should never, under any circumstances, post about this online. This X-post probably got her f***ing head blown clean off. From there, more and more posts began openly talking about erratas, as it was figured out that erratas referred to a program used by companies to allow them to bypass employee verification and access personal information without consent. This information was revealed in Jurassic Park 3 AMVs. Any attempt to expose this information was found, flagged, or dealt with. In the case of the Jurassic Park 3 account, not only had their mother recently passed away, but their videos were flagged and removed for having hidden messages that related to errata. Errata, the program itself, is described with a degree of sentience, able to act on its own, intentionally target and hunt users who have wronged it in the past, and work without the authorization of its creators. In its current state, there's ample evidence that Errata is a globe-spanning neural network that controls the flow of information to the point that the mentions of it that exist are simply exceptions that it lets slip through in order to delegitimize those who have pierced through and learned the horrible truth. Anyway, this is all bullshit. Yu-Gi-Oh! Disproves the Errata Theory because erratas are a basic part of the game. I mentioned them on the Iceberg previously, and you'll notice I'm bereft of bullet holes. Even the ARG itself can't help but address this one, since one of the routes leads you to a band called the KFC Murder Chicks, who are heavily involved in the Todd Ellsworth Jurassic Park stuff from earlier. They were asked about Errata Theory, and, well, they mentioned Yu-Gi-Oh! See, there's no global conspiracy about Yu-Gi-Oh! Zorc's design happened because of a stomach ulcer. The Millennium World arc is one of the least talked about arcs of the entire series. Probably even less so than anime original content like Waking the Dragons or the Virtual World. Despite this being the natural follow-up to Battle City in the manga, it gets way less focus for a variety of reasons. The key among them is the lack of dueling. Millennium World forgoes traditional dueling in favor of exploring a system called Ka and Ba, the reflection of the good and evil in a person's soul that allows them to manifest duel monsters in ancient Egypt. Ba is the fuel, while Ka is the result. Bakura's Ka is Diabound. Atem's was Dark Magician. This resulted in fights that were less Yu-Gi-Oh! Games and more traditional battles. The arc itself suffers from some aborted plot lines that make their absence felt, like the plotline about the priest Seto's betrayal of Atem in order to protect Kisara. That ended up not getting included due to what we'll discuss, and it leaves a tangible hole in the story. The most, I guess, divisive, memorable part of the arc is the final villain, and the final villain of the original run of Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole, Zorc Necrophades. Zorc is a millenniums-old creature born from the darkness in men's hearts, pure evil and bent on total destruction, using Thief King Bakura as a vehicle to enter the world of the living and wreak havoc. Fine, we'll talk about it. Now, Zorc's design does hold some congruity with the previously mentioned Diabound, namely the top half man, bottom half snake. Zorc, though, adds a pair of legs, which leaves his dragon dick. Zorc has a massive dragon dick that has kept him from ever appearing uncensored without a big moo-moo on. It's a design that's always drawn criticism and barbs due to how weird it is, and there's no defending it, it's a really weird design. No, don't make the attacks white! What was the reason for these changes and oddities during the Millennium World arc? Well, Kazuki Takahashi was working at 2/3 his normal pace, because he was dying! In the Volume 20 afterward, Takahashi would shed light on what was going on with him personally during the Millennium World arc, and it sounds straight out of a horror movie. He had become so unhealthy during the production of the Millennium World arc that he ended up vomiting blood and passing out in the middle of the night as he struggled to meet deadlines. When he next woke up, he was in a hospital bed and told by a doctor he had lost 1/3 of his blood from vomiting and had gotten a stomach ulcer, a condition that, to have gotten that bad, would have been going on for weeks. He had lost the ability to stand and had to stay in the hospital for 3 days before being discharged. Fearing that he might die before the end of Yu-Gi-Oh!, he abbreviated the Millennium World arc to remove the Kisara and Seto subplot and rushed to the ceremonial duel to make sure that, in case anything happened, the story would at least be finished. A complication of the ulcer and blood loss was that Takahashi admitted he felt like he had been working in a haze for most of the Millennium World arc, which led to the design of Zorc being what it ended up being. He mentions it jokingly, but I mean, would you have been able to think about this with all your blood? I think it speaks to a wider problem with the manga industry that authors are encouraged, required, beaten into working past their natural limits and work themselves to death. We see so many older artists suffering through life with health conditions that could have been treated if they were allowed time off, who have to take long breaks between new chapters because they can't keep up with the crushing schedules manga magazines keep them under. I'm glad that Yu-Gi-Oh! Was successful enough that Takahashi could escape a cycle like that, and I'm also happy we can all laugh at the Dragon Dick without a footnote being, this also killed the author. And this is it. We're really at the finale. The last fact on the iceberg. Can I be honest? It's gonna be weird now that it's over. I mean, this has been a full year in the making, a full trip around the sun, and I'm still here. It's been a labor of love, and one that has taken up days of my life trying to put it together. Multiple all-night editing sessions to try to get it out on time. Downing black coffee, which I never do just to stay awake to get it finished. Fridays turning into Saturdays, and I'm still working. Things will be going wrong in my life, like they are now, and it doesn't scare me as much because, well, I gotta keep going, I gotta make it to the next part of the iceberg. I'm not the same guy now that I was at the beginning of this project. I've lost a lot of stuff, and while I'm happy to finally put a bow on it, I don't know, it just kind of feels like I'm losing something else too. A sense of rhythm, of passion, of intent, of hard work and routine. I'm sure I'll still have that like I do with everything else I make, but I guess that is it. There is no but. I lose it, and that's it. So, thank you to everybody who's stuck by me for this long, who's had the patience to see this through to the end, and I hope that it was all worth it. Without wasting any more time, here is the final fact. Glacial Beast, Iceberg Narwhal. It's the only card in the game with Iceberg in its name.